son of a bitch.
He's a
About
fan
the
of mine.
comment,
He's a fan of mine. Huh?
the comment was, I'd go deal with him face to face, but I'm a little too old for that. I thought, you can still come talk to us face to face, you son of a bitch.
Who was he calling out?
Every one of us, we gotta clean the courthouse up. We need it's way too overdue for how clean this courthouse.
He called party line when the commission talking about the super thing, and he says, "When are you going to get up here and do something and clean up in Walker?" I said, "Al, it's easy." I said, "Look at Missoula Gulch; it's been completely reclaimed. I know Missoula Gulch well. I worked underground."
All he talks about is how
And
great
then-
he was.
And then
Was he great?
he says, "And what about these people that have those junk in their yards up here?" Well, then I guess that isn't Supervisor Walkerville's problem. I said, "Yeah."
How about when he was bitching saying he didn't want Butte-Silver Bow to get to Lexington? Walkerville should get it.
Oh yeah.
Not one of them sons of bitches. The 2 times they had volunteers show up to plant trees and stuff to make it nice. Like he says, what are you going to clean up Walkerville? Not a Walkerville person. And Julie was right. She was personally invited. Not one of them showed up.
Was he saying the council had to be cleaned
Oh,
up?
read the email. Oh, yeah, clean the courthouse. All of us, the chief executive.
Why should we be paying that guy 6 figures for doing that?
You know, I'll make a reservation for 2 million, and I'll just order it. These guys are going to bring me the donkey bag.
There you go. We'll call it backdoor chicken.
Backdoor chicken.
They don't have prime rib no more.
Don't you remember you were the one bitching?
Except they're making it.
I'm going to call the Butte-Silver Bowl Council of Commissioners regular meeting for Wednesday, December 4th, 2019 to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
We have 10 present and 2 absent.
Let the record show that Commissioners Shea, the other Shaw, Commissioners Shea and Sorich are excused this evening. Commissioner McDonough, would you lead us into prayer and a pledge, please?
Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which so greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver Bow. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I took it. Now is the time for any public comment on any items on the consent agenda.
R. Banner of 2601 Grand Avenue, speaking as president of the Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation. Section 1, consent agenda, committee reports, Judiciary Committee, Communication 19466, requesting a change in the zoning ordinance requiring community residential facilities as defined by state law to obtain a conditional use permit within Butte-Silver Bow County in all residential zoning districts. I am concerned that I do not see included in this report any reference to extending an invitation to a representative from the State of Montana Department of Justice to give a presentation to the full council and to the public about the state law relative to this kind of transitional group homes businesses. I believe that a motion was made, seconded, and passed to that effect at the reported Judiciary Committee meeting. I have a comment about the other communication that didn't get on the agenda. I'll do that later.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments on any items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll move for the approval of the minutes of November 20th, 2019. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the November 20th, 2019 regular meeting minutes.
Second?
We have a motion made and seconded to approve the November 20th, 2019 regular meeting minutes. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
10 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. Next, we have two items not addressed on the agenda that we have to suspend the rules for to get them on. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. In accordance with the provisions of Section 6 of Rule 6 of the Rules of Business for the Council of Commissioners of the City and County of Butte-Silver Bow, State of Montana, the Council hereby finds that an emergency condition exists which requires that the Council suspend the rules for allowing Communication 19-574 be added to tonight's agenda. The reason for the suspension is Communication 19-574 is a communication from Community Development Director Karen Burns requesting Council authorize the Chief Executive to sign a grant application to the Montana Main Street Program to provide $10,000 in funding for the street features in Uptown Butte. This communication was not submitted prior to the deadline for submission of the December 4th, 2019 agenda because the Community Development Department only learned of its eligibility to apply for this grant after such deadline. At this time, I would make a motion to approve the suspension of the rules to consider placing Communication 19-574 on tonight's agenda.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to suspend the rules to place Communication 19-574 on tonight's agenda. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record?
10 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. Next, Communication 19-573, Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. In accordance with the provisions of Section 6, Rule 6 of the Rules of Business of the Council of Commissioners of the City and County of Butte-Silver Bow, the Council hereby finds that an emergency condition exists which requires the Council rules be suspended to allow Communication 19-573. The reason for the suspension of the rules is as follows. Communication 19-573 is a communication from R. Edward Vanderob, President of the Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, Incorporated, requesting Council ask the Chief Executive to have personnel from the Environmental Division of the Butte-Silver Bow Health Department or other appropriate VSB staff provide a presentation report to the Council and public regarding the health risks to Butte-Silver Bow citizens associated with airborne metals. This communication was inadvertently left off the December 4th agenda, and Mr. Vanderob has requested that it be added to the December 4th, 2019 meeting. At this time, I move to approve the suspension of the rules to consider placing Council number 19-573 on tonight's agenda.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve the suspension of the rules for the purpose of placing Communication 19-573 on tonight's agenda. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
10 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. These two communications will be acted on after the consent agenda at the end of the meeting tonight. Next, under the Chief Executive's report, I just want to remind everyone that the Christmas stroll will take place this Friday night starting at 6 o'clock. Well, the tree lighting at the corner of Arizona and Park will take place at 5 o'clock, but then the Christmas stroll program starts at 6 o'clock here in the rotunda of the courthouse. Everyone is invited. What's that? Park. So under the Superfund report, I just want to say that we're still waiting for the federal government to review and send their the consent agenda to be dispersed to the public. And It looks like it might be later in December before that happens, so it probably won't be rolled out until after the holidays, but there will be plenty of time for this council to read up on it and move forward with that. Having said that, we'll move into the consent agenda, Section 1A, 1 through 4, committee reports, and B, communications 1 through 21. Are there any suspension or segregations or friendly amendments? Commissioner McDonough.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'd like to segregate out of the Judiciary Committee meeting report, communication number 19-466.
433?
466.
Oh, 466.
19-466.
Okay. Any others? Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'd like to segregate number 15, communication 19-562.
Okay. Any others? Seeing none. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'd make a motion that we approve Section 1, the consent agenda, A, the committee reports 1 through 4, with the exclusion of communication 19-466 in the Judiciary Committee meeting report. B, communications 1 through 21, with the exclusion of number 15, 19-562.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda exclusive of the Judiciary Committee report, communication 19-466, and B, communication number 15. Is there anything else on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
10 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. We'll go to Judiciary Committee report, communication 19-466. Commissioner McDonough.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Considering Mr. Vanderhoop's comments, I'm sure that I failed to make note of the fact that we referred it to the Planning Department to request somebody from the state to give a presentation to the full council. So at this time, I'll make the motion that we had referred, or that we refer communication number 19-466 to Ms. Casey in the Planning Department to request a representative from the state of Montana to give a presentation back to the full council. And Ms. Casey's currently working on that, but I'd like to make that in the form of a formal motion.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded to refer communication 19-466 to the Planning Department, Ms. Casey, for a report back to this council. Is there anything on the question? All those in favor? Aye. Yeah, would everyone please vote? Never mind your eyes. Anyone would like to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
9 yea, 1 nay.
Motion carries. Next, we'll go to communication number 15. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I'll just refer to the county attorney. Oh, I'll read the caption, though. Communication 19-562, Ed Randall, Community Enrichment Department Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorize the Chief Executive to sign a contract with Dowell for engineering services related to 135 Park Street in Butte, Montana, 59701. There was some issues and some language in the contract that needs to be considered. So,
County Attorney Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Commissioner Morgan, I think I provided a copy of the second page of the contract where the changes were made, and it's in the indemnity and insurance provision. Essentially, the Chief Risk Officer for Dow had requested these changes be made in order to more fully comply with their professional liability insurance coverage. And as you can see, it just took out the words occasioned by, growing out of, or in any way arising or resulting from, and just changed it to the extent caused by. And then she wanted to add a sentence that their obligation to defend Butte-Silver Bow would just basically be to the extent of their liability. So really it's just, to me, it didn't change the substance of the paragraph. Dow is still agreeing to defend Butte-Silver Bow and indemnify it for any losses or damages or liability that are the result of Dow's negligent or intentional conduct. And this added sentence just basically says that if there was a claim made and liability was apportioned between Butte-Silver Bow and Dow, that they would only have to defend us in regard to whatever liability apportion. If they were apportioned 50%, their defense costs would be limited to 50%. And that is consistent with the state law, and I mean with the case law on this insurance coverage. And that's what she pointed out in her email. So we agreed to make those changes, and because this project is somewhat time sensitive in that we would like to have this dangerous building evaluated, I would ask that you approve this professional service agreement with those amendments.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. With that being said, at this time I would make a motion that we approve Communication 19-562 as amended and place on file.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve Communication 19-562 as amended and place the communication on file. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
10 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. Next, we will do the two that we suspended the rules for. Communication 19-573. This is the communication from R. Edward Vanderrob, President of the Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, Inc., requesting council ask the Chief Executive to have personnel from the Environmental Division of the Butte-Silver Bow Health Department or other appropriate Butte-Silver Bow staff provide a presentation/report to the Council of Commissioners and public regarding the health risks to Butte-Silver Bow citizens associated with airborne metals. This communication, I don't have to say that. So, Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. It's my understanding Mr. Vanderhoff has something to say about it, so I would ask him to come up.
Edward Vanderhoff, 2601 Grand Avenue. I may have to apologize. It may have been my mistake. This request is relative to Communication 18550 that was submitted last year about doing a study to set the standards and to do widespread monitoring in all of the Superfund area. We do not give a damn about the fish, and we do not give a damn about the creek, but we do give a damn about the people and the humans. Communication 18550 requested the Butte-Silver Bow Chief Executive ask the Butte-Silver Bow Health Department Environmental Health Division to determine if there are airborne metals that pose a health risk to Butte-Silver Bow citizens, and to look into the possibility of recommending an obtainable local metals PM10 airborne standard to be created based on a commissioned study. We had a previous study presented here by Dr. Haler that indicated that metals are not detectable in the PM 2.5 that they are now presently analyzing. The Butte Health Department has advised us that they are working with Montana Resources to do the air monitoring study. We now have 4 studies indicating as a mining community there are hazardous to human health heavy metals contaminations that may cause health risk in our greater community as they do in other mining communities. The Butte-Silver Bow Public Health Officer agreed fully with the recent research that we needed urgent more study relative to the metal levels, to the high metal levels in Butte babies' mecoma, as Dr. Hiller called it this morning in baby poop. The hazards to human health heavy metals contaminants present in our mining community pose a real and or a perceived health risk in our greater community and are a community-wide concern. Therefore, we have requested this report from the Butte-Silver Health Department to this council and to the community. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Before I turn it back to Commissioner Morgan, I would just like to add, after that last communication was put in, we did have a meeting at the health department. There was MR, I was in attendance, representatives from Bison Engineering, who MR has hired to do this study, but it's not an overnight study. It takes time. They have to collect samples over at least a year's period before you can come up with any good data. And they are doing that. And I will ask the health department to give a report on where they're at so far. But until all of that data is collected, nothing can be done, really. So it is outside of the Superfund area. It's at the Greeley area, which is supposed to be the worst of the area, be contended as the worst area for the dust coming from the active operation of mining operation in the town. So that's where it was decided to be placed, and it's an ongoing operation. So we expect the results to be coming in, but I don't know if Karen Sullivan would like to add to that or not, but Karen is in the audience, so Karen.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer, members of the Commission. For the record, I'm Karen Sullivan, Health Officer. I think, Chief Executive Palmer, that what you conveyed is accurate. I do believe that we have 2 quarters of data in. We recently received the 2nd quarter of data, and the preliminary finding is that we're not finding anything of particular concern. We have always measured for PM 2.5 in the Greeley neighborhood, but with the enhanced monitoring, we're monitoring for PM 10 and total suspended particles, otherwise known as TSP, and some other measurements as well. And we are working with MR in that endeavor. MR, in turn, has hired Bison Engineering. And so on the roof of the air station at the Greeley, the roof is pretty covered now with a variety of equipment, and the monitoring is ongoing. And the bottom line is, does the Greeley neighborhood and the rest of Butte sustain poor air quality because of current day mine operations? The health department has a lot to say about that. At the end of the day, for current day mine operations, MR in particular. The Montana DEQ has jurisdiction over the mine. And I'm happy to bring staff up. I know MR would be happy to talk about it as well as experts from Bison. I think what we're waiting on is a little more data gathering to have our ducks in a row to convey whether there's an issue or not. And right now, while the preliminary data, I'm told, looks good, I don't want to convey that until we have, a certain trend in regard to what we're finding.
I would like to add that the DEQ does have jurisdiction over active mining operations, and they were in attendance at that meeting with Bison and MR and the health department and members of the public.
I would like to add one other thing. That same group, along with others, including Mr. Banderob and other residents of the Greeley neighborhood, attended a second meeting, which was held at the library? The library. And we all agreed at that time that we would take a breath, step back, let some data get gathered, and re-meet. I talked to the director of our environmental health division, John Rolich, to determine whether we should have another meeting of that group, which I don't think it has an official name. Maybe we should. Yes, it's a focus group with that name. My apologies, Mr. Banderob, for not remembering what the title of that was, but we did meet again with intent to meet yet again, and we agreed at that time maybe a half year would be a good time to meet, which I think would be right after the first of the year. But then again, do we have enough data to have a good discussion? And I'll follow up with John, who's our environmental health head, and determine when another meeting should be held in collaboration with the Greeley neighborhood folks and people from MR and DEQ, all the people who sit on that committee.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions for Karen from the council? You're welcome. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. With all that, I would just make a motion that we refer communication 19-573 to your office, Chief Executive's office, and place this communication on file.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to refer this communication 19-573 to the Chief Executive's office and place the communication on file. Is there anything on the question? Commissioner Anderson.
Would it be better to leave it open until it was acted upon, or?
Well, it's being acted upon. We're collecting the data as we go, but do you want to report back before we collect enough data to make a difference, or I guess it's up to you guys. But
I guess what I was thinking is that they could give us an idea of what they're doing and how the public. There's been an awful lot of talk about this. Might be nice to hear from them, and they can give the public an idea of what is going on and how they're collecting the data and what they're hoping to, and a timeline.
Okay. Whatever. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. This simply refers it back to you. If you feel it's pertinent to have them come back sooner, you could do that. I like to see results, and I like to see data in its complete form rather than speculation. I think that would go farther with the public. And so it sounds like they're working on it, and thank you for doing what you're doing.
Anything further on the question? Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. I agree with Commissioner Morgan, and, it's a pretty broad request. It's the Environmental Division, the Health Department, or other appropriate staff. And I don't know whether we're appropriate staff or not, but we just had a pretty good report there. I know there's concern amongst, and I can understand Mr. Anderson's wanting to, show the public that we're trying to get something done, but I think the health department and Karen are doing a pretty good job, and John Rolich are doing a pretty good job. And I just think that I got to agree with you and Commissioner Morgan that there's no sense trying to get information that isn't going to give us no more information than we already have. So if we have the DEQ and you have Bison working on it, and we've got our health department, I think we might as well wait and get a complete consensus of what's going on. Then we'll be giving the public complete information rather than something that may or may not take place in the future. So I concur with the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further on the question? Seeing none, will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? The clerk, please record the vote.
9 yea and 1 nay.
Motion carries. Next is communication 19-574. This is the communication from Karen Burns. Let me find it here. This is asking for permission for the Chief Executive to sign a grant application to the Montana Main Street Program. Karen, would you like to say something about this?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, members of council. As my letter states, we just became aware that we're eligible to apply again for a Main Street Program grant. The Main Street Program grant application cycle opened on November 15th. We were unable to apply at the time when it initially opened because we have an open grant with the Montana Main Street Program that is in the process of wrapping up. We submitted that. Previous project was a preliminary architectural report on the Finland Hotel, and we're wrapping that report up. A draft of that report has been submitted to the Department of Commerce. It was just submitted last week, and we found out late last week that that does make us eligible to apply for a Main Street Program grant again. And so the deadline to apply is next Tuesday. And so I really appreciate you entertaining the fact that we could ask for permission for the Chief Executive to sign this application going forward. The application is being prepared, like I said, with partnership with Main Street Uptown Butte and George Everett, and he's in the process of completing that application. It goes hand in hand with the project we are working on for the URA, Uptown Butte, Main Street Uptown Butte, for garbage receptacles, banners, and planters. We submitted an application in partnership to SARDA also for this same project, and so we really are just trying to tap all of our available funding sources.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I would make a motion that we concur with communication 19-574 and place on file.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to concur in the request in communication 19-574 and place the communication on file. Is there anything on the question? Seeing none, will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
Ten yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. Next, we'll go into Section 2, Communications to be read and acted upon. Communication number 19-563 from Karen Sullivan, Health Officer, requesting Council of Commissioners to allow time on the December 4th, 2019 agenda to present a video produced in relation to the project titled A National Pilot Project of the Inclusive Healthy Community Model by the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors, with support from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chief Executive Palmer. Members of the Commission, with me this evening is Todd Hoare, who is the coordinator for everything ADA in Butte-Silver Bow, and also the coordinator of the Disabilities Council. And just to provide some background on this project, Todd and I were approached about 4 years ago by some people who work with the disabilities community on whether we were interested in working on a grant that would ensure that our community was more inclusive in regard to people with disabilities, and Todd and I agreed. We ended up being one of 10 communities selected nationwide for this project, and what we endeavored to do was to learn from some of the best practitioners in the country to reframe what we already knew going into the project, and that was that people with disabilities experience significant barriers when attempting to access health and wellness. And I'm not overstating that when I say this community is a better community today because of this project, and we'll tell you why. The project came along at the same time the community was deliberating a bond issue to greatly improve one of our outdoor areas, Stodden Park. And indeed, in May 2016, voters did authorize a bond, which made possible our community's first public pool in a generation. Todd and I were working on this project at the very same time, and we took the Stodden project as an opportunity to really insert what we were learning about disabilities and inclusion into the project. What made that possible? I think maybe Todd can speak for a minute in regard to his being at the table in an ADA way over the years when Butte projects were being undertaken.
Mr. Chief Executive, Council, yes, what we saw in this project was the opportunity to, for the inclusion piece. So while we follow the ADA as closely as we possibly can in every project, we had this opportunity to make this project inclusive from the ground up. What this grant allowed us to do is the time and the effort to sit down with both the design team in the beginning stages and talking through the whole layout of the whole, from the parking lot to the sidewalks into all these different locations. So you'll see in the video some of the highlights of what that planning allowed us to do.
And really what it brought to the table was that ADA became less of an afterthought and put people like Todd, who work with ADA every day, at the planning table from the beginning. J.P. Gallagher has been critical in regard to how Stodden came to be and the inclusionary aspect of it. Just backing up a little bit, this project was bigger than Stodden. We were also able to insert language into the 10-year update to our 20-year transportation plan, and that language built, we were Todd and Cassie Waitman, who works with the Montana Independent Living Project, which is a program that works to make people living with disability more independent. Todd and Cassie undertook an active transportation survey. We added that to the transportation update. It's actually an addendum to that. And what we were trying to do in the transportation update was really addressing the overall functionality of our transportation system, travel convenience, traffic safety, connectivity, and other issues including multimodal use. And to achieve all that, the plan says that our county must plan for, design, construct, operate, and maintain appropriate facilities for pedestrians, people who bicycle, transit vehicles and riders, children, the elderly, and people with disabilities in all new construction activity, maintenance, and retrofit or reconstruction projects, kind of modeled after complete street principles. And so, along with our work at Stodden, we were able to really ensure that the update to the transportation plan included this language that also focused on the disability community. What we've learned, there are roadblocks for people with disability. There are ingrained socioeconomic injustices and disadvantages and environmental, programmatic, and attitudinal barriers with communities. They still exist, and this is a major contributor to health disparities suffered by people with disability. What we learned: to be healthy, people must seek physical fitness, and people with disability aren't always able to do that. We know that fitness staves off chronic disease. We know that chronic disease is responsible for 7 of 10 deaths in the United States. We know that 75% of the $2.5 trillion spent annually on health care in our country is spent on chronic illness. We know that our goal in this project has been to prevent chronic disease from occurring in the first place, and we know that those living with disability deserve the same shot at wellness as do the rest of us. And so, to kind of wrap this up, an inclusive community is one in which all community members are presumed competent, are recruited and welcomed as valued community members, are fully participating and learning with their peers, and are experiencing reciprocal social relationships. An entirely inclusive community ensures that these elements apply as well to members living with disability. This video was produced with our partners at the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, otherwise known as the CDC. If it's not on the CDC website yet, it will be. Todd and I had the great fortune of being in Atlanta twice through this project and in Birmingham, Alabama. And being in Atlanta at the CDC is like being at Mecca for public health geeks like me. So it was just an incredible project. The video really shows the work that was undertaken at Stoughton and what makes Stoughton so cool. JP could not be here tonight, but wow, what a partner he was. And then Andrea Boyd, who's a Butte-Silver Bow employee and mother to 2 daughters with cystic fibrosis, also could not be here this evening, but they're a big part of our work and a big part of this video. So with that, thank you. When this project began, I had unconscious bias in regard to disability inclusion. What I learned is that people with disability have a higher rate of chronic disease and not as many opportunities for physical activity as the rest of us. And I saw that suddenly in the midst of this project as a social injustice, and what I could do as a health director and a public health officer through policy, through systems change, through environmental modification, that we could fix all that and be a better community because of it.
So we're in Stoughton Park, and this is one of Butte's kind of iconic parks. All ability, as we were looking at it, is the ability of kids to be able to play with other kids no matter what their ability is. We looked at how can we make it the most active playground that you can for everybody involved here. And so all kids that come here will find something that they're successful at. It's been a huge hit. We've seen the park here with having over 150 kids a day here.
I mean, it is unbelievable the number of people that come to this park. We're talking 2-year-olds to 99-year-olds and every ability in there to use this park. And we really wanted to put that spin of the old mining history into it. And as you can see, the dump truck that's loaded with play features. The climbing wall on the other side is totally unique to this area, which is like our large M on our mountain, and then all of the things in between that we've all seen you don't want to leave here. You just want to sit and watch everybody play. You actually want to climb on it yourself. So it's very adult friendly too.
It makes me proud just to look out and see all the kids and the smiles and the happiness out of them. You know, you don't, when you see a kid playing, it's hard not to smile yourself. You don't see many tears out here. You see a lot of smiles and a lot of giggles.
I am Annie Boyd. I live here in Butte, Montana. I have 2 beautiful daughters with cystic fibrosis, Brooke and Haley. We come here because I grew up here. I went to Stoughton Park when I was a child. I want to pass this to my children as well. And now it's easy to do that for them because they don't look disabled, but they are deemed disabled. And sometimes we don't all understand that even though they don't look that way, they are. And they look healthy, but this is more friendly for everyone. They get to go to the park and then to the water park and also the carousels here. And they have fun. This is what we want them to do, is have fun.
Yeah, this is the Ridgewater pool that was just opened last summer. So the zero entry design is about the most inclusive design there is, because anybody can use it, from babies to people with gait problems, somebody that might need a wheelchair. We have 2 lifts that take you into deeper waters, and then we have a moat that has the ability to where if you can't swim, you can be taken through by current. The inclusive design was incorporated into the carousel. As you can see by the ramps, brings you to a central loading spot. The chariots spin. You can roll right into them. I haven't seen this design in other carousels, and we feel pretty proud of this, having 2 chariots that are accessible.
Yeah, I feel included as part of the wider community. I'm not different. I'm not special. I'm not less than. I am just like anyone else, and I can go about my business and get out into the world.
You know, I can say on my gravestone that, you know, I helped improve a town, and that's very prideful for me in regard to a town I love. This project made that even better because inclusion is fairness, inclusion is justice, and it makes my heart swell to have been involved in this. It's been the project of a lifetime.
Well, thanks, Karen and Todd. It did turn out to be an excellent project and something that we can all be proud of, and it is very inclusive. So thank you. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I will make a motion that we place Communication 19-563 on file.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to place Communication 19-563 on file. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
10 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. Number 2 is Communication 19-564. Karen Sullivan, Health Officer, requesting Council of Commissioners to allow time on the December 4th, 2019 agenda to present outcomes from the School District Number 1's Montana SOARS grant and work accomplished by the Butte-Silver Community Action Team, along with myself, Karen Sullivan. Butte-Silver District Number 1 Curriculum Director Jim O'Neill would be presenting. Jim and Karen, the floor is yours.
So thank you again. With me this evening is one of my heroes, Jim O'Neill, who's the curriculum director at Butte School District Number 1. and who has made our work at the Community Action Team so meaningful. The Community Action Team was formed 6 years ago when we had children dying by suicide. And the previous chief executive, Matt Vincent, after we had sustained our third youth suicide over a 6-week period, called together a group of people. Jim and Judy Jonart were among them, the sheriff, and we all looked at each other in the room and we were scared to death. We had kids dying. All of these young kids had died by firearm, and the firearms were readily accessible to them. So that was the seed of the Community Action Team, and we went to work. Ultimately, we decided that our team would be dedicated to creating a healthy and inclusive community through education, referral, and assistance to services that really are centered on health and wellness. Our vision is through education, relationships, and community connection. We will build a healthy, resilient, empathetic, which is really important, and a compassionate community where we all care for one another by taking care of each other. Our goals in the beginning were to build this system where we could better refer to services, including children. And right about 2 years into the Community Action Team, the school district became the recipient of the Montana SOARS grant, which was a 5-year, $2 million grant that has accomplished amazing things in our city and our public school system. Our goals through all of that were to build a resilient, trauma-informed community. In other words, understanding trauma and what it does in early childhood. And a traumatized child grows into an adult who often has behaviors that limit their life, like drug use, alcohol use. Understanding that better and making kids into resilient adults was important to us. Very important to us was building the Connect referral system. And thank you, commissioners, for helping us to fund that system. That is up and running, and today, so far, we have 19 agencies enrolled in that and about 41 programs. So, and we're better able to refer to each other and make sure people are getting the help they need. We agreed to be a part of the Attendance Matters campaign. We have found that a child who attends school all day, every day, has a real shot at all of life's possibilities. And it's particularly important that kids attend school all day, every day in K through 3. Judy Jonart has always said, if I can have a kid reading by the end of 3rd grade, I've got a shot. And that's what that's about. So we agreed to be a part of that campaign. And then our 4th goal has been to be advocates for good policy. So every other year, we're in Helena advocating for suicide prevention policy and other policies that lend toward creating healthier communities. Our short-term accomplishments, after we determined that we had a real firearm problem on our hands, we worked with Sheriff Lester and other people to garner free gun locks, and ultimately we distributed more than 2,100 in the community, telling people that we didn't want to get into the gun issue, but we talked to people about storing their guns, locking them, keeping them out of the reach of teenagers. If they had to be in the home, store them in a locker if possible, or get them out to the garage. We knew that locking a gun really impacts the impulsivity that often accompanies a suicide. We developed true community partnerships. The community action team is comprised of people from the health department, the school district, Southwestern Montana Community Medical Health Center, the hospital, so many others, private therapists. It has become an amazing group of about 60 people. 25 about show up consistently at our monthly meetings. We wanted to train students. I'll let Jim talk about that. We wanted to train adults, what to look for, what mental illness is, what the stigma around it is, how to eliminate stigma. The school district brought in national expert Stacy York, who talked to us a lot about trauma and what a trauma-informed community is and the promise of a trauma-informed community. And then we're able to accomplish a variety of free trainings that we have available to businesses, organizations, service clubs, anybody who asks us, and we have free trainings, adult mental health first aid, youth mental health first aid, signs of suicide, question, persuade, refer, otherwise known as QPR, signs of suicide, I think I already mentioned, and a presentation on adverse childhood experiences, which is all about trauma in early childhood. Again, the Attendance Matters campaign. I remember when I was a young mother and I had a first grader with the sniffles. What does it hurt? It's only first grade, right? I'd let my child stay home. Again, particularly in K through 3, it's really important to have the kids in school. Jim has relayed to me that the state of California projects how many jail cells to build in the future based on third grade reading scores. That blows me away. Again, we're building Connect. That was a big deal to us. And with the assistance of that county, we're doing it. And with that, I'd like to introduce Jim O'Neill, who has been just really an incredible partner in our work. And while Jim's getting up here, I'll pass these out. And I'm told, Jim, you hit the right arrow.
Thank you, Karen. And I'd like to thank Chief Executive Palmer and the Council for taking a few minutes to hear the accomplishments of the Community Action Team and what we've been doing in the school district the past couple of years. As Karen mentioned, about 5 years ago, we received a $2.2 million grant from SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Agency, through the Office of Public Instruction, along with the Kalispell School District and the Browning School District. And one of the main objectives of that grant was to build a multi-tiered system of support, which you can see on the screen up here, addressing social and emotional learning. If you don't address that side of the report card, the other side of the report card, the social and emotional learning, you can forget about your academics. Because if you don't have kids regulated and ready to learn, they're not going to learn. So over the 5 years, along with our leadership team, our SOARS case managers, and our teachers, we were able to build this multi-tiered system of support. So it's chunked into 3 sections. Tier 1 is the bottom section. And Tier 1 is utilized for all of our students. An example of Tier 1 supports or programs that we brought in are, for example, Signs of Suicide. We do Signs of Suicide, which is a program that teaches kids how to recognize symptoms in other students who may be suicidal. And there's a screener that the kids fill out that helps us identify which kids may be suicidal. And our case managers, our school counselors, our school therapists, they intervene with those kids. And for example, 1 year at Butte High alone, we identified 60 kids who were in crisis. And we were able to intervene right away, get a hold of their parents, have our counselors, our case managers work with these students. And without that screener and without that intervention, we would have never known about these kids. So Another example of a tier, and we do our signs of suicide, we do with our 6th graders, 7th graders, 9th graders, and 12th graders. We try to hit those transition years. Those transition years in school are difficult for kids. An example of another Tier 1 program we brought in is a home visiting program. We trained all of our kindergarten teachers in the home visiting project, which initiated out of Sacramento. Every year before school starts, our kindergarten teachers visit every one of the homes of their incoming kindergartners. And they do that to build relationships with families and parents so that there's that trust. A lot of parents didn't have a good experience when they were in school, and they have a chip on their shoulder, and we're trying to melt that ice and develop relationships with parents so they feel comfortable reaching out for support and coming to the school when they need something for their children. So that's another Tier 1 support. And you can see there's a lot of them up there. One last one I'll mention quickly is the PACS Good Behavior Game. And all of these interventions and services are evidence-based. We couldn't implement anything that didn't have research behind it, that these programs worked. The PACS Good Behavior Game we brought in, we trained all of our K through 6 teachers. And it's basically a classroom management program that teaches kids how to self-regulate. Governor Bullock has been instrumental in trying to push this throughout the state and have all school districts implement it. And we're proud to say in Butte that we implemented it several years ago. So those are examples of Tier 1 supports that we've implemented in the school district. But obviously, not every student's going to respond to those Tier 1 interventions, so they become Tier 2 kids. So we brought in Tier 2 evidence-based programs to work with those kids that aren't responding. And that's about 10 to 15% of your population. And our case managers, teachers, principals work with our kids with those Tier 2 supports such as check and connect, check in, check out. It's basically working with kids every day, working with their parents, taking their heart rate. Some kids have a resting heart rate of 160 beats a minute. So you can imagine if you're at 160 beats a minute, you're triggered pretty easily. When we teach them through zones of regulation, how to identify what zone they're in emotionally and what skills or what tools you can use to regulate yourself. So those are examples of some Tier 2s that we brought in. And then Tier 3 is kids that are in crisis. And we do have kids in crisis in our schools. And the main Tier 3 service that we've had for a long time before the grant even is we have mental health therapists in all of our schools. So if kids aren't responding to the Tier 1 or the Tier 2, they are in Tier 3 services with therapists. So it's a lot of work, a lot of programs that have been brought in to help our kids. And we have some data that I'll share with you here right now to talk about what those services have done for our kids. OPI hired an independent evaluator to evaluate 3 school districts with the grant, and this is a sheet you have in front of you, and to see if these interventions, since they're research-based and evidence-based, to make sure they're working. So if you look, and I don't have that sheet in front of me, but the first column talks about the main goals of the grant, and then I think it's the third column over has the different programs we had in place before the grant, and then the big column, I think the third or fourth over, is all the programs that were brought in through the grant, and the last column is a column that I want to talk about quickly here. So throughout the 5 years of the grant, data was compiled through surveys, approximately about 3,500 surveys that we gave to our students in those 5 years. And what we found from the beginning of the grant to the end of the grant is that we had a 31% decrease in bullying, this coming right from the kids. We had a 36% decrease in cyberbullying. The kids reported that there was a 32% decrease in students who felt unsafe, a 51% increase in students enjoying school, a 23% increase in students believing that rules were being applied equally in the buildings. We had a 23% decrease in suspensions and expulsions in our K through 6 classrooms or schools, which is huge. we know suspensions and expulsions don't work, but sometimes you don't have any other option. You have to keep everyone safe. We've trained 732 people in the community, probably half of those people being school district employees, our teachers, and youth mental health first aid, which we consider that a major accomplishment because that's a day-long training. It's a 7 to 8 hour training. We have 1,028 students that were referred outside the school district to other services. We had a 956% increase in students receiving Tier 2 services. The reason that percentage is so high, we never really had Tier 2 interventions before this grant. You had your Tier 1s, and then they went straight to Tier 3, when a lot of them didn't need that. So the grant really brought in a lot of those Tier 2 services for our kids. We have all our schools on the Connect referral system now. Commissioner Mankins has been trained in the referral system, so he can refer kids to outside services when needed. And we had a 41% decrease in students feeling sad or hopeless. And then the one that really makes me feel good, and we're not perfect, we're not catching everyone, but we've had, and this was data from the students, a 30% decrease in student suicide attempts. And if you've read anything in the media or newspaper on the news, Montana is highest in the nation for suicide, and Silver Bow County is number 1 in Montana. So it's a problem throughout the country, but we feel we've got the arrow headed in the right direction. The grant ended September 30th, but our Board of Trustees were committed to sustaining the work that our case managers and all of our leadership team and teachers have done. So that's what we've been doing, and that's a little skewed there. I don't know what happened there, but what we've done in the school district now, we're trying to replicate building that multi-tiered system of support through the community action team for adults. So that work's begun with the community action team. This has been updated since we have a lot more Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. But our major goal with the community action team right now is we're working on developing this pyramid, this multi-tiered system of support for adults in our community related to mental health, and then finding a way to market that to the community, because our community has a ton of programs and a ton of resources for adults, but a lot of people don't know about them. I didn't know that the 4Cs has over 26 programs that they offer to our community. So our goal is to build this triangle, build this pyramid, and then market it and saturate the community with that information, and then use that Connect referral system, start referring people to services. So, and as Karen mentioned, our community action team has all these trainings that are free to any organization or group in the community. And I know there are a lot of ACEs presentations have been facilitated in the courthouse. ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences, is definitely the most popular training because it's only an hour long, but it's a powerful presentation. Youth mental health first aid, I won't say them all again because Karen already mentioned them, but that's our other goal, is to let the community know we can bring these trainings to their businesses, to their organizations. Northwestern Energy brought in an ACEs trainer. We have 15 of them in the community to train a lot of their staff in ACEs. So I'm proud to be part of the community action team. As Karen said, we have about 60 active members with a good core of 25 that show up every month, and they're from all walks of life, as Karen said. So it's a great team to work with, and they become good friends, and it's all about creating a healthier community. So that's the end of our presentation. Are there any questions you have for us? Well,
thanks, Jim and Karen. Are there any questions from the commission for Jim or Karen?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Good job. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'll make a motion that we place Communication 19-564 on file.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to place Communication 19-564 on file. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
10 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. Next is Section 3, ordinances and resolutions referred to judiciary. Number 1, Resolution 19-68. Number 2, Resolution 19-69. Number 4, ordinances and resolutions, second reading. Number 1, Council Bill number 19-13. Ordinance number 19-13. Will the clerk please read the title?
Council Bill number 19-13, Council Ordinance number 19-13. An ordinance amending Title 12 of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, BSBMC, entitled Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places, amending Chapter 1212 entitled Sidewalk Maintenance, adding new Section 1212.052, amending Section 1212.070, 1212.072, and 1212.074, and providing for an effective date herein.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Council Bill 19-13, Ordinance number 19-13 on second reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to pass Council Bill 19-13, Ordinance 19-13 on to second reading. Is there anything on the question? All those in favor, please vote. Even if you're not in favor, vote. Anyone wishing to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
We have 8 yea and 2 nay.
Motion carries. Number 2, Council Bill number 19-14, Ordinance number 19-14. Will the clerk please read the title?
Council Bill number 19-14, Council Ordinance number 19-14. An ordinance repealing Chapter 1518 of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, BSBMC, entitled Electrical Code, and amending Chapter 504 of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, BSBMC, entitled Business License, specifically adding Sections 505115 to be entitled Electrical Wiring Permit Requirements, and providing for an effective date herein.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Council Bill 19-14, Ordinance 19-14 on second reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to pass Council Bill number 19-14, Ordinance number 19-14 on to second reading. Is there anything on the question? Everyone please vote. Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
10 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. Number 3 is resolution. This is for the suspension of the rules for final passage on resolution number 19-67. Commissioner Morgan.
Mr. Chief Executive, I move for the suspension of the rules for the purpose of passing Council Resolution 19-67 by waiving subsection 7 of Rule 36 of the Rules and Orders of the Council of Commissioners, thereby having it considered for advanced passage without reference to the Judiciary Committee.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to suspend the rules for the passage of Council Resolution number 19-67 on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? Will the clerk please record the vote?
10 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. Next, Council Resolution 19-67. Will the clerk please read the title?
Council Resolution number 19-67. A resolution accepting the donation of certain parcel of real property described as portion of Casey Street, Delaware Avenue, California Avenue, Irvin Street, and Noyes Street, Track 8, as shown on the attached exhibit, consisting of approximately 7.14 acres, located in Section 19, Township 3 North, Range 7 West, PMM, Butte-Silver, Montana, for the purpose of assuring that Butte-Silver County have more control over that portion of the roads in order to maintain the roadways, including any future utility work that may be needed to be done, and providing for an effective date herein.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan.
Mr. Chief Executive, I move to place Council Resolution 19-67 on final reading and pass, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to pass Council Resolution 19-67 on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? Anyone wishing to change their vote? The clerk please record the vote.
10 yea and 0 nay.
Motion carries. Now is the time for any public comment on any public matter not on the agenda. Seeing none, I'll call your attention to calendar of other meetings and events. Commissioner Morgan.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Is there anything on the question? Will everyone please vote? I thought I'd catch Jason there. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.